Hello and welcome to my Doctor Who review. My name's Samalan and today I shall be going over the 2019 New Year special Resolution. This episode saw the return of the Daleks, or Dalek, for the first time in this current era of the show, which would later directly lead into the sequel episode Revolution of the Daleks, which I covered in my previous video. Link in the description below. And speaking of which, in said video, if you watched it, you may recall me briefly bringing up Resolution. 1 minute 53 seconds in. I expressed I wasn't really a fan of the episode and I just wanted to revisit this statement because honestly that was putting it lightly. I really did not like this episode when it first aired. At the time for me it was honestly one of the worst Doctor Who episodes I had ever seen. It was specifically this point in the new era of the show where I just finally realised, yeah, this ain't gonna get any better, is it? So to say I was reluctant to go back and watch this episode is an understatement. But after reviewing Revolution of the Daleks, it only made sense to go back and revisit the episode that set up those events. But you know what, guys? Things can change over time. Wines mature, spring turns to summer, Netflix subscriptions go up by £1. This was the mindset I tried to go back into this episode with, because who knows? After 2 years of my first and only viewing until recently, perhaps like a fine wine, Resolution got better with age. So after going back and analysing the episode, has my opinion of Resolution changed? Let's find out. Well, you find out, I already know. So the episode starts off with some narration. The identity of who's exactly narrating is anyone's guess, which tells of a great battle a long time ago between these guys called the Custodians and their opponent, which is, you guessed it, a Dalek. So after the Custodians defeated the Dalek, wait, the Dalek lost? A super advanced alien death machine slain by a bunch of people with swords and shields? A bit unlikely, don't you think? But the Custodians were apparently so fear-struck by the Dalek in this awesome and bloody battle we never get to see, that they split their opponent into 3 pieces to bury them at opposite ends of the Earth, even going as far as guarding the burial sites as a precaution. No, sorry, what? If you were that scared of something that you're willing to spend the remainder of your lives guarding its corpse, why wouldn't you just burn the body and be done with it? What thickos! So they all go off to their separate destinations, which are kindly communicated to us through obnoxiously large text. I don't know why this is a trend in the Chibnall era, but my guess is they're trying to catch the attention of viewers who are already half asleep. The Custodians go and bury their pieces of Dalek around the globe, and can I just say, dogs do a better job burying their turds. But as this last guy makes his way through the lifeless wasteland that is Sheffield, he is shot dead by some roadside robbers who just seem to touch him up a bit and not actually search him properly. Try digging deeper, guys, you might find something. They don't even pick up the mysterious bundle, which could, at the very least, have had food in it, something that would probably come in handy living in this barren landscape. They don't even take their bloody arrow back. Why is everyone in this time period a moron? We then get this nice transition shot bridging us from the 9th century to the present day in the exact same spot. Though I do find it hard to believe that no wild animals dragged this corpse off for supper during the many weeks it must have spent decomposing out in the open. We are then introduced to Lynn and Mitch, 2 archaeologists who are unearthing the skeletal remains of the fallen custodian in the sewers on New Year's Day. They talk about a kiss they shared the night before and confirm they have feelings for each other, but this isn't relevant to the plot in the slightest. They then find the package that the custodian was carrying when he died, which is of course the severed piece of Dalek. And let me tell you, this thing being here is a miracle. Let me explain. First up, for these robbers to hang around at the side of the road waiting for a victim to pass by surely means that this road would have had a fair share of users. Otherwise, what would be the point of waiting somewhere where you have no idea if someone's going to come by? So after this bloke was killed, you're telling me that no passers-by saw this dead body and decided to loot it? Or if they did, every one of them left behind the wrapped up bundle of Dalek. Surely someone would have taken it even after taking a peek at what was inside. I doubt people were too picky about what they ate back then. A lovely bit of calamari would have gone down a treat. Secondly, we're led to believe that over the many centuries this Dalek has spent buried, it's not decomposed in the slightest. We know Daleks decompose. We were introduced to the very idea a couple series back. So how is this one completely intact aside from missing 2/3 of itself? Anyway, back to Lynn and Mitch. The Dalek piece is bagged up and placed under an ultraviolet light. Yep, that's where that stupid concept came from. The Dalek uses the ultraviolet rays to resurrect and rebuild itself, summoning its other 2 parts from around the world which are still being guarded. It just makes me laugh how over all the many protectors these burial sites must have had over the centuries, not one of them thought, actually those custodians were fucking idiots, weren't they? And just burn the Dalek remains and scatter the ashes into the ocean or something. It's just so dumb. But anyway, the Dalek's reborn, and then we cut to the Doctor and the gang watching a display of cosmic fireworks, which we have to take our word for because the CGI budget clearly didn't stretch far enough to actually show it. Then the Doctor receives an alert from the TARDIS console, and when the companions question it, the Doctor states she leaves an alarm on for Earth just in case. Okay, since when? Because now I'm thinking of all the times there's been alien activity on Earth and the Doctor failed to show. Perhaps she kept hitting snooze. Don't worry, Doc, we've all been there. Anyway, the alarm is alerting the Doctor of something non-terrestrial attempting a spatial shift in Sheffield, so off they go. Meanwhile, at the excavation site, the now fully restored Dalek shifts itself off from the table and somehow manages to quickly scuttle out of sight despite being bagged up. And even though Lynn was directly looking at the table where the Dalek was, she doesn't seem to clock that it's gone missing. Lynn then goes off searching for the missing bag that they suspect a rat took, and instead finds the fully formed Dalek mutant chilling on the wall. A bit like those sticky toys you threw at the window as a kid. Now, I wasn't really a fan of this Dalek mutant design when this episode first aired, but whilst it still can't compare to these bad boys, I can get along with this one now. But God knows how it fit in such a tiny bag. Then, whilst Lynn decides it might be a good idea to touch the Dalek, we just have to admire how good the visual effects look here. It looks so disgusting. I can't really understand how Mitch isn't seeing all of this though. They're only this far apart from each other, and from this shot, he seems to be looking in that general direction anyway. Surely, even in his peripheral vision, he would have saw a giant squid thing illuminated by the beam of Lynn's torch. The TARDIS then materialises and the gang step out, the Doctor immediately scanning Mitch for some reason before Lynn informs them about the creature she found. They all go to have a look and discover the Dalek is gone, leaving behind some goop. The Doctor then puts the site under quarantine and gets Lynn and Mitch to leave. Yaz escorts them to the exit, and when Mitch protests, Yaz says she's got their details so she'll let them know when it's safe to return. Hold on, when did you get their details? During the couple of seconds it took to walk from there to here, and these two just sod off without another word. Watch.
We'll make sure it's all kept safe. I've got your details now, so we'll let you know when it's okay to come back down.
What a couple of pushovers. He says here that they've been working on this archaeological find for months, yet they follow the order to quite literally piss off from a group of strangers without even asking for identification. For all they know, this could be a group looking to steal their work.
Did you see what I did there?
It's a scam.
I dread to think how many times these two have had their banking details stolen. Also, this would have been a great opportunity for Chris Chibnall to actually use Yaz's powers as a police officer in this situation, perhaps whipping out her badge after Lynn and Mitch refused to leave or something. It would just make her character more useful for once. But alas, of course, this doesn't happen. Anyway, after collecting a sample of the goop, the gang set off and materialise in Graham's living room, landing on Graham's chair and breaking it. I found this amusing at first, but then I realised the TARDIS doesn't land on things, it materialises around them. Though this could just apply to living things and not objects, so feel free to correct me on this one. Graham then directs the Doctor to the kitchen so she can get some eggs to help analyse the goop before the doorbell rings. Graham answers it, and guess who it is? Ryan's estranged dad, Aaron! What convenient timing. Graham slams the door in Aaron's face, but then Ryan goes back to let him in, introducing his dad to everyone, and for some reason Aaron doesn't react at all to the blue police box slap bang in Graham's living room. Then the Doctor speaks well out of her place, having a go at Aaron for letting Ryan down by not being there for him at his nan's funeral. I'm sorry, you have no idea what reasons he might have had for not going. I don't care if you saved the universe countless times. It's none of your business, Doctor. And worse still, everyone in the room lets her get away with it. Imagine if Graham actually stood up and told the Doctor off for intervening in a personal matter that's none of her business. That would have been some great Doctor-companion conflict. But nope, he just sits there in silence. Come on, mate, put her in her place. She deserves it. Okay, calming down, and we're back. Aaron invites Ryan out for coffee, and Yaz suggests a cafe around the corner. As the two get ready, Yaz makes a comment to the Doctor about the dad's situation with Ryan being complicated, with the Doctor responding with,
Dada. I've heard.
So I've heard. So has she just confirmed that she doesn't even understand the complexity of father-offspring relationships, giving her even less ground to stand on with earlier? And also, you've literally been a dad before! My God, what an infuriating scene. We then cut back to Lynn arriving home, who's not feeling too well. She goes to the bathroom and takes off her jacket to reveal the Dalek mutant latched onto her back. Right, so back in the sewers, the Dalek managed to slip underneath Lynn's clothes without her feeling a thing. How? The Dalek then speaks up to reveal to Lynn it has control of her body, and I do not like its voice. I don't mind Daleks sounding different from time to time, but within reason. It just sounds like a generic monster here. Then after some weird crossfades, the Dalek Dalek uses Lynn to gain knowledge of all of the planet's systems, weapons, etc. All through a single laptop and basic internet connection. I'm no hacker, but I don't think it works like that. Again, though, do feel free to correct me on this because I'm not a hacker. Meanwhile, in the TARDIS, the Doctor has finished analysing the goop, discovering it's Dalek goop, though I don't understand why she acts so shocked as if it's impossible. Surely she'd know by now the Daleks have a knack for surviving against all odds. Plus, the method used to defeat them last time didn't look too difficult to bounce back from. We then get these really weird tilted shots as the Doctor explains to the gang what a Dalek is. Was this actually storyboarded? This just looks jarring. Then the Doctor says,
I always think I'm rid of them. Never am.
What do you mean? In Revolution of the Daleks, you literally go out to purposely find a Dalek ship just cruising around in space. So you clearly do know there's Daleks about. How could you possibly think you're rid of them? We then cut to this speeding sequence on a motorway until Lynn and the Dalek, who I'm now going to start referring to as Dalek Lynn, are pulled over by the police. The copper comes over to give Dalek Lynn a good telling off, but gets more than he bargained for. His partner pauses her daily crossword to assist, and when we get this shot, all I can think of is When You Die in that old Slenderman game. The policewoman is then dealt with too, and Dalek Lynn makes off with her uniform and police car. The Dalek expressing how its host is a useful soldier. Going back to its voice, I really don't like how this Dalek talks either. The way it praises his victim, it just sounds too emotional for something that only feels hate. The pace of the episode is then completely grounded to a halt when we get to this scene. Nearly 5 solid minutes of utter boredom. In a nutshell, Aaron sits down with Ryan to have a chat about his absence as a father, and it also introduces this microwave oven that Aaron is trying to flog, which becomes relevant later. But good God, this scene is boring. There's this bland synth ambience in the background, which I suppose is trying to make the scene more emotional. And the worst offender in this scene has got to be, for me, drumroll, the acting. Aaron is fine, nothing too special, but it's Ryan I want to take a look at. What a surprise. I want you to examine Ryan's face, right? Pouring his heart out to his estranged daddy. Look at his face. Does it look like he's expressing his frustration from a tricky relationship with his father? No, it looks like he's having a tricky poo. Anyway, moving on. The Doctor and co come and pick up Mitch, and they question him to see if he and Lynn uncovered anything alien during their archaeological dig. To which Mitch reveals the story of the custodians that we see at the beginning of the episode. With this information, the Doctor concludes that what they found was indeed a piece of Dalek buried on Earth since the 9th century, using UV light to piece itself back together. No explanation about how this is possible, it just can. Brilliant! They all rush back into the TARDIS to try and locate Lynn, who hasn't been answering her calls for obvious reasons. The Doctor suspects this has something to do with when Lynn encountered the Dalek on her own in the sewers earlier and manages to track down Lynn using Yaz's phone, seeing the Dalek's biopattern is in the same location as her, deducing it's using Lynn to get around, and basically finding out everything we already know. Ryan and Aaron then return home from their soap opera coffee talk, Ryan entering the TARDIS and for some reason bringing the microwave oven with him. Lucky it becomes useful later, eh? The Dalek then blows up the TARDIS's systems with a fallback blast from when the Doctor tracked his location. This leads to the Doctor realising she's dealing with no ordinary Dalek. She's dealing with a reconnaissance scout, which have capabilities beyond standard Daleks. Don't get excited about these special abilities, by the way, because apart from disabling the TARDIS for a bit, we see nothing else extraordinary. The Doctor then orders Graham to fetch some peanut butter from the kitchen so she can lube up the TARDIS. Meanwhile, Dalek Lynn arrives to a place called MDZ, a weapons research company where the remnants of the Dalek shell that was destroyed in the 9th century are being stored. She faces little to no resistance, which is quite handy considering this is an organisation dealing with alien tech, and gains access to the archive. We get some cool music accompanying the shots of the Dalek acquiring his things, a bit of bass and electric guitar. Lynn loads all the gear into the back of the car before the Doctor hacks the Dalek. Yes, hacks it. The two have a bit of a chat, the Doctor demanding the Dalek lets Lynn go, to which it responds with,
I think he's laughing.
oh thank goodness, I thought it was choking. But on a serious note, Daleks don't laugh, unless they are quite literally insane. The Doctor then keeps the Dalek chatting while she reboots her systems and the TARDIS sets off, leaving Graham behind, who seems shocked at this, even though he's the one who spent 3 minutes fetching peanut butter from his own kitchen.
Where'd they go?
Did they? Take the cabinet.
You thought that was a cabinet? Back in the TARDIS, the Doctor's having a hard time trying to track down the Daleks' movements, so she phones for backup. That backup being Unit. However, after phoning the number, it's revealed that Unit has been suspended pending review, essentially just scrapping this organisation from the future of the show entirely. Seriously? Chibnall just couldn't resist, could he? It's for such a poor reason as well. Oh, there hasn't been an alien invasion for a while, so the funding stopped. Really? Unit's been a part of Doctor Who since the 60s, and this is the undignified ending you're going to give it? Back at the house, Graham gets down a box of Aaron's old childhood things, having a chat about why he didn't go to Grace's funeral. This scene is okay and does a nice enough job in explaining that Aaron didn't go to the funeral because he couldn't bear to face the truth of his mum's passing, but now I'm curious. Does he know the exact cause of his mum's death? I.e., does he know she fell from a crane whilst battling against a floaty ball of wires? Or did they just keep him in the dark and say she fell down the stairs? Guess you could say she fell from grace. Fuck, that was bad. Anyway, before we move on from the scene, there's just one thing that caught my eye. This toy car amongst Aaron's belongings. I did my research and it looks to be based off the Lamborghini first gen Gallardo, which were manufactured between 2003 and 2008. Now, let's say that Aaron's in his early 40s, right? That means he would have been in his mid to late 20s when this car was in active production, along with the toys. Therefore, I highly fucking doubt this was an object from his childhood. Okay, I will call myself out because I am being nitpicky here, but it's simple attention to detail. I know it doesn't impact the plot whatsoever, but if I can think hard enough about this, then so can the people being paid to make the episode. So moving on, Dalek Lynn arrives to this farm by the coast. Dalek Lynn then kills a farmer and begins work on rebuilding itself. We then get a little montage of the Dalek using Lynn to reconstruct its casing using remnants and spare parts before Lynn rebels against her operator. The Doctor and everyone then arrive to find the dead body of the farmer outside and enter the barn where they find Lynn, still alive with the Dalek no longer attached to her back. Then as the Doctor is about to go off and search for the Dalek, Yaz says she can't go by herself, to which the Doctor replies she always has done. Well, that's a lie, innit, Doc? What a way to undermine everyone who's ever helped you. Then, after a bit of searching, the Dalek makes its explosive entrance. Now, I don't mind this design. The idea of a Dalek rebuilding itself is a cool idea and it comes off well. And it also leads to these bad boys in the sequel. But its voice now is like an ordinary Daleks, which is good. I'm glad to have it back, but we've leapt from this
Are a useful soldier.
to this.
Exterminate!
It doesn't even seem like the same creature, does it? The two have a chat and the Doctor reveals herself to the Dalek, not in that way. Recognising her as the mortal enemy of the Dalek race, it sends deadly lasers flying her way. And I love the little camera shakes that accompany each shot. A simple little trick to emphasise the might of the Dalek's firepower. After failing to land a clear shot, the Dalek flies off to complete the conquest of Earth. The Doctor then returns to the TARDIS and gets shamed by the others for letting the Dalek get away, as if they could do any better, and goes back to pick up Graham, who explains the TARDIS to Aaron in the most unintentionally funniest way possible.
It travels in space and time.
Yaz then pops her head out to retrieve Graham, relaying the Doctor said that Aaron can come too. What? Why is the Doctor letting him come? So she can bully him some more? They're about to face the deadliest creature in the universe. Is the Doctor actively trying to increase the chances of collateral damage here? We then come to this cool scene of the Dalek engaging the army, which is honestly shot beautifully. It's just a moment where the higher production values really pay off. The Dalek then zaps someone after giving the army a brief chance to surrender, and I don't know why, but I love this line.
Allocated surrender period has expired. Consequence extermination.
The Dalek then flashes his missile tips, and this soldier man quietly orders his men to retreat.
Run.
What?
I'm not gonna lie, that's a bit unprofessional, mate. Also, Daleks, missiles, really? When have they ever needed that? We then get these lovely slow-mo sweeping shots of the Dalek exterminating everyone in sight. This just looks great. We then get a couple moments of silence as the dust settles, which I quite like for some reason, before a tank trundles up and fires a shot at the Dalek. Somehow, this is possible. The tank blows up and the Dalek flies off. This is a cool and visually impressive scene, but if this wasn't the Dalek's destination and only landed to pick a fight with the army, it's pretty pointless when you think about it. Though I am a Dalek fanboy and I am partial to seeing scenes of extreme extermination, so I don't mind this too much. Back in the TARDIS, the Doctor is tracking the Dalek and hits some space turbulence or something, causing her to notice Aaron's microwave oven in the most forced way to remind the audience Ryan brought it on board earlier.
Who brought a microwave with them?
It's actually an oven and a microwave.
Nice.
Fair enough. The gang then discuss ideas on how to defeat the Dalek, Mitch whipping out his book which depicts how the custodians managed it back in the 9th century. So you're telling me this lot defeated the Dalek by tying it to the ground and setting it on fire? This thing can fly, shoots lasers, apparently carries missiles now, and its casing is made of one of the most durable metals in Doctor Who lore. I am calling bollocks to this. Anyway, with this insulting information in mind, Aaron comes up with the idea that he can use his microwave oven to help defeat the Dalek. They start stripping the oven down to its bare components in order to use it in their fight against the Dalek. The Doctor then realising Aaron's idea, and I was genuinely shocked by what she said next.
You're almost making up for your parenting deficit.
Oh my god, you're actually so rude. Fair play to Aaron for showing restraint and not just twatting her at this point, though you can so tell he wants to. And of course, everyone lets the Doctor get away with her shit yet again. Why is no one confronting her about her awful behaviour? The Doctor then figures out where the Dalek is headed, and we cut to GCHQ, the biggest communications resource in the country. The Dalek makes its grand entrance inside and kills the one guy working there. Why there's only one, I have no idea. Also, before it crashes through, we hear the Dalek above killing people and breaking through layers of building, hinting that there's floors above this room. Yet when the Dalek makes it to this level, we can see daylight through this hole, so it must have crashed through the roof. Where did those screams come from then? The Dalek then prepares a transmission to summon the Dalek fleet to Earth, and I find it very convenient that this control port was just the right size for the Dalek's USB stick thingy. Imagine if the port was any smaller. That would have been the whole Dalek's plan. Fuck them, wouldn't it? As the Doctor monitors the Dalek's progress from the TARDIS, she sees that the Dalek is diverting all the UK's energy into powering its transmission, which leads to Wi-Fi and phone signals shutting down all over the country. This then brings us to the worst scene of the episode. Yes, worse than this one. Quite possibly the worst scene I've ever seen in Doctor Who. Here, just watch it because I don't want to explain what happens.
The Wi-Fi's gone off.
Everything's gone off. No Wi-Fi, no phone signal, it's all down.
What do we do?
Suppose we'll have to have a conversation.
What?
I am hilarious. I am the funniest thing in the whole wide world.
Why did Chris Chibnall think this was appropriate or funny? It's such an old, obvious, dried out social commentary on our relationship with technology. Also, if we didn't have a dependency on entertainment media, you'd be out of a job, mate. Ryan and Graham are used to really ham up this gag as well. Graham being like, oh my god, it's shutting down the internet on the day everyone's hungover. And Ryan being like, what a monster. Yes, because being a genocidal death machine hell-bent on the decimation of your species doesn't lend it any monstrous qualities at all, twats. Anyway, that's the worst over with, so surely that means it gets better from here, right? Mildly. The TARDIS arrives at GCHQ and the Dalek fires on sight, but the Doctor and the gang are protected by the TARDIS's force field. The Doctor gives the Dalek a chance to stop what it's doing and leave Earth, but why would you do this? It's highly unlikely the Dalek would take this opportunity anyway, but even if it did, the Dalek would then just fly off and find other planets to conquer, or even go and find the Dalek fleet by another means and bring it back to Earth. So with this in mind, why are you bothering with chances here? Anyway, the Dalek obviously declines the offer and the Doctor hatches a plan, which is to run up to the Dalek, attach Aaron's microwave components to it, and run back. Wow, is that easy, huh? I'm now less surprised this Dalek got its backside handed to it all those centuries ago. The microwave's components melt through the Dalek's shell in a special sciencey way, which felt like a BBC bite-sized lesson slapped in the middle of this scene when the Doctor explains it. Then with the Dalek seemingly defeated, they then hear the Dalek having another choking fit, latched onto and in control of Aaron's body. Right, I'm not going to question how it survived that, but I will question how Aaron went from standing relatively close to the Dalek to suddenly appearing at the other end of the room. The Dalek threatens to kill Aaron unless it's taken to the Dalek fleet, and the Doctor gives in to its demands. So I'm guessing that means the Dalek knows the exact coordinates to the Dalek fleet. But who's to say the fleet's in the same place or even still kicking it? It has been centuries. So the TARDIS arrives at its destination, but it's a trap. The Doctor actually taking the Dalek to a sun going supernova. The Doctor has set up a vacuum corridor only big enough for the Dalek mutant to fit through and plunge to its death. However, things quickly go awry when the vacuum corridor uncontrollably uncontrollably expands, meaning Aaron is also at risk of flying out into space too. Aaron holds on for dear life, and bloody hell this bloke must be strong to resist the gravitational pull of an exploding star. Ryan then goes to rescue his dad, using the power of love to pull him to safety. Yep, that's essentially what happens. The Dalek loses its grip and falls into the supernova. The Doctor then pulls a switch to close the doors. Wait, what? As soon as Aaron was at risk of getting sucked out into space, you didn't think to do this. Anyway, the day is saved and Ryan makes a comment about his act of heroism.
Not bad for a kid with dyspraxia, right?
Yeah, it would be, except your dyspraxia has only been a minor inconvenience twice in the 10 episodes before this one, so it's actually not very impressive at all. We then finally get to the end of the episode where the Doctor takes Lynn and Mitch back to their dig in the sewers and asks Ryan's dad if he fancies a trip in the TARDIS. Why just him though? What about the other two? They did stuff. Aaron declines the offer but is perfectly fine for his son to continue travelling, not seeming to show a shred of concern despite witnessing firsthand just how dangerous the universe can be. The two have a farewell hug and the gang set off for more adventures, leaving us with this decent enough shot and a nice little callback to one of the title sequences from the 70s. And cue credits. And there you have it, that is Resolution. So what did I think of it the second time around? Well, that stuff I said earlier about fine wines maturing, that definitely doesn't apply here. I think it's fairly obvious what I thought of this episode, but before I go into deeper detail, I just want to go through the stuff that I did like. I liked how this was a single Dalek story, as these are quite rare, the last one airing in 2005, and it does a decent enough job of showing how deadly a solitary Dalek can be. The reconnaissance scout I thought was a cool addition to Dalek lore and ranks, and I like the idea of a Dalek landing on ancient Earth and fighting off against primitive humans. I think if they had set the story around this premise alone, it would have made for a much more interesting episode than the one we got. Perhaps the Doctor helping the custodians to defeat the Dalek, and perhaps maybe even when she leaves that time period, they split and bury the Dalek, leading to the events of Resolution in a future episode, making this Dalek a recurring threat for this Doctor to fight, like the 10th Doctor and the Cult of Skaro. I know we kind of get this in Revolution of the Daleks, but that Dalek was a clone of the one in Resolution, so I'm not going to count that. I don't know, I just think that would have been an interesting idea. What else did I like? The scene of the Dalek versus the army is quite cool. Yeah, I think that's about it for positives. Unfortunately, the bad things seriously outweigh the good things. So, the things I didn't like. Let's do this in sections. First up, the story. This had potential. Like I said, a lone Dalek on a mission to conquer Earth. That's good. Nothing terribly original, but good. The execution was just piss poor. So many unbelievable things were thrown in, such as the ease to take down a Dalek with ropes and fucking fire. Plus how it's able to resurrect itself centuries later with UV light. Plus a few other conveniences here and there. The whole absent father subplot with Ryan was pretty dull, which I found grinded the pace of the episode to a halt at places, but thankfully this wasn't as present as it could have been. Still though, just not needed alongside a Dalek story. The writing really lets this episode down as well. Terrible dialogue. Too many characters in the TARDIS at once, which just felt like some of them were tagging along for the ride at points. I mean, look at this shot. Also, some scenes were just such a struggle to get through. I must have watched this episode about 3 times for this review, and I often found myself browsing through my phone and sometimes even straight up skipping certain scenes, either because they were boring, annoying, or downright terrible. Next up, the characters. Yaz was okay, but still pretty useless, as were all the companions really. Graham has a moment to shine when he has that one-on-one talk with Aaron about losing people, but he falls straight back to cringy pretty quickly. Ryan, despite having an emotional subplot to himself, was still about as expressive as a doorknob. I just can't get over how bad he is. Don't worry, I'm not going to complain about this guy in every single review I do, but I just want to highlight that there's a bottomless pool of acting talent out there that would kill to be on Doctor Who, yet the BBC hires someone who is probably made to play the blade of grass in every school play. The side characters, Lynn and Mitch, were okay, though you could tell the writers didn't know what to do with them after Lynn is rescued, as in the last 15 minutes of the episode they only get a few lines and they just sort of stand around. I did enjoy the casting for Lynn though. I mostly know the actress from this Channel 4 comedy called Fresh Meat, which if you haven't seen it, I recommend you do.
I only wanted to watch the fucking rugby!
So it was great to see more range from her. She does a good job embodying the evil of the Dalek. Ryan's dad, Aaron, was alright. Yeah, that's all I got. And leaving the best for last, the Doctor. This might be Jodie Whittaker's Doctor at her worst. On top of being her usual annoying and inconsistent self, she jumps head first into matters that aren't her own, and she's insanely rude. Okay, sure, the 12th Doctor was rude, but the difference is he was written as a grouchy old man. That was his character. When the Doctor lays down this line about Aaron's parenting deficiency, it just makes her look like she's got a superiority complex, thinking she's better than him because he's been an absent father. I know this isn't how the writers intended for her to look, but yeah, the Doctor is a bit of a bitch in this episode. Okay, and for other stuff, the production values were good, though some strange creative choices at times, and the scene with the Dalek versus the army is especially pleasing to the eye. The CGI is convincing for the most part, though there's a couple little instances where it doesn't look the best. The soundtrack had some nice little moments with electric strings and cymbal drums, but the rest of it forgettable. Generally though, things were fine, mostly. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Dalek itself. I wasn't mad for it. Its motivations were fine, and I didn't mind the scrap metal armour, but other than that, there's nothing else I really liked about it. Its voice was just not Dalek enough when it was out of its casing. Too generic and too emotional with all the praising and teasing it does to its victim, even seeming to relish in it, smiling through its host and even fucking laughing. I must admit though, it had some cool lines of dialogue, and I liked how it was a genuine threat, but the fact that it's so easily defeated in both the 9th century and the present day just completely shatters the fear factor for me. So with all of this in mind, plus just lots of other little things I didn't like, I will describe this episode in one word: crap. Just crap. I didn't like it 2 years ago, and I might even like it less now. And there you have it, that is my review for Resolution. If you enjoyed this, which I hope you did, please consider dropping a like on this video and maybe even subscribing if you want to see more content like this. And whether you agreed or disagreed on my thoughts on this episode, please let me know in the comments below. Also, I've recently done a collaboration video with Time of the Whovians United. The link to the video is in the description, so feel free to watch that. And be sure to check out their other stuff as well, because they made some good content. And that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for watching. I've been Samalan, and I'll see you later. Bye!